How are you this Tuesday?
Thank you so much for having us. I am doing well, thank you, and I hope you're doing well as well.
I am great. Can you start by telling us a bit about the Laudato Si movement and what it's doing in Africa right now?
Yes, Laudato Si Movement is a faith-based global Catholic climate movement that emerged after the release of the encyclical letter by Pope Francis called Laudato Si in 2015. We have been doing grassroots mobilizations, empowering leaders in the grassroots to take more actions for climate justice. And we have been doing this also in collaboration with partners and all people of goodwill. In Africa, we look at the aspects of a just energy transition and really raise our advocacy and encourage grassroots to address the issues happening around them in their communities. And we do this through three approaches. One is to look at the aspect of sustainability and footprint reduction. The second one is to engage on an eco-spiritual perspective. This is where we pray, we organize pilgrimages, and we use the language and the teachings of the Catholic social teaching. And then the last one, of course, is advocacy, where we work with different actors and groups and civil society groups to call for accountability, to call for more ambitious and bold action when it comes to addressing climate justice.
So, SECAM has emphasized that Africa must lead its own climate solutions. From your perspective, what does true Africa led climate action look like? I don't know if it will touch on those values of your movement on eco spiritual, on sustainability, as well as advocacy.
Yes, it does. And what SECAM is emphasizing is what Laudato Si emphasizes. So these are reflections and teachings that have emerged both from looking at faith-based perspective, but also looking at scientific research.
Mhm.
And what has come out is that there are a lot of solutions that are being touted to address the climate crisis that are not sustainable and they are not proven technologies. Instead, SECAM and the wider Catholic faith community and the science is urging for us to go back to a different way of living and to reimagine what development would look like. This looks like addressing issues of food sovereignty, looking at how we can go back into regenerative agricultural practices, looking at the adoption of renewable energy because fossil fuels are failing Africa, and the developmental pathway based on fossil fuels will lead us into destruction. This is also looking at the solutions being touted, such as carbon markets and carbon trading, which are not sustainable and they are impacting indigenous communities. And so, what SECAM and the wider movement are saying is that the justice component is very, very critical, especially in Africa when it comes to looking and addressing the climate crisis. And this is not what is being addressed, unfortunately, when it comes to some of the summits. And so the voice of SECAM becomes very, very urgent as it brings the aspect of morality and justice that is grounded also in faith and science when it comes to addressing the climate crisis. There are also a number of issues that are taking place, including promoting the inclusion of youth and women and marginalized communities, looking at how we can continue to use the traditional practices, and also generally just looking at the aspect of consumerism and excessive development and looking at a development pathway that will assure that Africans can get access to the energy that they need, that they can get access to food that is nutritious, and that they can overall continue to develop, not that they will end up being left behind because of adapting these Western approaches that are not favorable to our context.
Talking of traditional practices, local communities and indigenous knowledge are often at the heart of sustainability. Can you share examples of how African communities are already driving change when it comes to this?
Yes, quite many communities in Africa, faith-based movements have been organizing and practicing regenerative agriculture in their communities, and they do this in a way, for example, in Kajiado, Kenya, where I come from, there are faith-based communities that are looking at teaching the indigenous Maasai communities on how to grow their own food, on how to have a circularity between the cattle that they keep and how they can use that to be able to create manure for the plants that they use to feed. And this is able to be replicated across the community. They also have dug a borehole and they use solar energy to be able to drill and use water that can be used to water the farm and also provide water to the communities. The same is happening in Senegal, where we have Franciscan congregations and Franciscan communities. These are Catholic communities that are working towards ensuring that they can exchange seeds, indigenous seeds, across each other and preserve the different varieties of plants that we have. Across also Uganda, we have the Medical Mission Sisters that has been really championing the aspect of creating its own pesticides from materials that are organic. So instead of buying the pesticides from the companies which has chemicals, make it on their own using the different varieties of plants and herbs that are indigenous to the region. And so this is a practice that has been happening from time to time. It is being championed by various Catholic communities. The education is there. The same is happening in Zambia, in South Africa. And we continue to replicate this in a way that is favorable to communities and to encourage also that we do not just rely on the solutions that are being given to us blindly, but really looking at how we can do the research and ensure that what we are practicing and putting into practice is sustainable. This is also very cost effective and community effective. We know that when it comes to farming, there's a lot of startup costs. And when you utilize the herbs and you can grow what you need to be able to address the issues that you're facing in your farm, it is definitely more affordable than having to engage in purchasing, for example, different type of fertilizers. When it comes to renewable energy, it also pays off in the long term. So we do not have to continue relying on this grid electricity. We can continue to embrace renewable energy. Kenya is one of the countries that is continuing to do that, and we hope that it can be replicated across the region so that renewable energy can be able to give communities the access that they need. One challenge and the barrier that we want to address at the summit is to ensure that the technological transfer and the critical minerals and processing capacity can be brought to the African region so that the African people can be able to manufacture and be able to use the resources that they have to leapfrog into this energy
Ashley,
transition.
we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for your time, and we can see how the perspective of the church describing climate action as a moral and spiritual duty can mobilize communities and influence global change discussions that need much of that influence. Ashley Kitisya is Africa Programs Manager at the Laudato Si Movement, which works in partnership with the Catholic Church through SECAM. Let's get our news headlines now. It's 7:31 Central African Time. Good morning, Onele.